How's it going, Diablo fans? So thank you so much for all the questions you are asking me, but I simply don't have the time to answer them all at once. So I decided to just make a very quick FAQ video to just give you the answers on the 5 most commonly asked questions. So let's get started. So just check the description down below and click on the section where your question is asked, and I will give you the answer with a long and good explanation. So we're gonna deal with the following question. First question, how do you not have mana problems? Second question, why do you use a two-handed staff and not wand and focus? Third question, why do you not use Tal'Rasha ring or ring of Starless skies? Fourth question, how do you use Flame Shield and Teleport or Frost Nova enchantment if you don't have it on your skill bar? And also, why do you put skills into Lightning Spear if you don't have Lightning Spear on your skill bar? And fifth question is, how do you have so much gold? Okay, so the most common question people ask me is, how do you not run out of mana? I'm playing this build and I'm running out of mana all the time. What shall I do? So mana regeneration in this Frozen Orb build is Conjuration Mastery. Conjuration Mastery gives you 12% multiplicative mana regeneration per active conjuration. So as soon as you hit a certain amount of active conjurations, you're gonna be golden. If you don't hit it, you're gonna have no mana and you're screwed. That being said, since you need to spend mana to spawn conjurations, there's definitely like a threshold you have to hit before this build actually gets going. So if you're too slow, you don't have enough attack speed, you have bad base mana regeneration or whatever, you need to use other measures to fix your mana regeneration first. And we talk about this after. So what I'm talking about now is you're already in the later stage of the game, you have good gear, and you have the possibility to spawn conjurations. You also have like 5 or 6 out of 3. So you don't need to have the +3 from the Winter Glass if it's not updated. It's okay if you have the +2. 10% is still good enough. So here's what happens, right? You have your base mana regeneration. This shows 20 for me. If this number shows 10 for you, or 13, go to the next part of the video because your resource generation is not fixed, okay? If this number shows 13 for you, you're not gonna reach the point where you have to be. So skip ahead to the next part where I show you how to fix your mana regeneration if you don't have optimal gear yet. So if your number here is 20 or higher, 20 is already low. This is the lowest I can actually play. So 20 is really low. If your number is 20 or higher, so pay attention to what happens if I now cast 1 Ice Blade. The number goes up to 22, okay? Because the Conjuration Mastery gives me 12% multiplicative, and this comes after all multipliers. So now let's do some Frozen Orbs, and, you know, we see I am at 31, right? And I'm casting. And I stay at like 30. So I'm not on a perfect state yet, right? So I'm not fluently casting. I'm basically low on mana. So now I'm at 40. So now I'm like kind of at the base where I can cast as much as I want. And I'm going to close this menu right now, right? So as you can see, my mana is basically always like in the middle, right? So now as soon as the boss is staggered, I don't have any mana problems anymore whatsoever. I'm going to talk about that right after. But if the boss is not staggered, as you can see, I'm running out of mana now. So why is that? Look at my Conjuration Mastery. I have 7 stacks. So that is not enough to sustain. So now look at my bar and look at my Ice Blades. I'm not casting my Ice Blades. So now I'm starting to cast my Ice Blades. Look at the bar with the Ice Blades and just wait for a little bit. Okay. Now I'm at 9. Just look at the Ice Blades cooldown and look that I'm instantly recasting those Ice Blades. Right, so I want to hit 10. And again, on the dummy, it is not very representative because it's unstaggered, right? As long as it's unstaggered, you're still going to have mana problems. But this is definitely good enough. And I'm not running attack speed elixir on anything right now, right? So as you can see, I'm almost sustaining. I'm not perfect at this point. As soon as the boss is staggered, which happens like right now, right? So I hit Unstable Currents even. Now you can see my mana is like absolutely no problem while the boss is staggered. The boss is not staggered anymore. I'm running into mana issues. And that's on purpose, right? So you're not supposed to be with this build perfect when the boss is not staggered because you're playing stagger. But again, spam your Ice Blades. Never stop spamming your Ice Blades. That's the most important for your mana regeneration. Keep spamming those Ice Blades. So that is the in-fight mana regeneration secret I can give you. And now I'm gonna give you tweaks if you're still struggling. So the very first tweak you look at is go to your skill tree and check the Frozen Orb passive. Do you have Destructive Frozen Orb? If not, skill this. If you have Greater Frozen Orb for whatever reason, it's a complete waste in this build, okay? You don't need Greater Frozen Orb. You have Lightning Spear, and Lightning Spear is going to be spawned by the Winter Glass, and Lightning Spear applies vulnerable anyway. So this is a completely wasted point. You want to have this one. In a dungeon scenario, this is already fixing your mana almost 100% of the time. In a boss fight, this is, as soon as the boss is staggered, every Frozen Orb restores 5 to 10 mana basically, because you might cast 2 because of the, the new tempering attribute. So this is going to fix your mana when the boss is staggered, period. If you didn't spec this and see, it's going to work. All right? This is not a tweak, this is a mistake. If you if you misspec this, you just made a mistake, fix it, and you're going to be good. All right, now let's talk about tweaks you can do. So there's one tweak, for example, I'm using Mystical Ice Armor, right? This gives me 15% extra damage. Pretty nice, but it doesn't help you anything if you don't have mana. So let me show you this tweak now. I'm gonna remove Mystical Ice Armor and gonna go into Shimmering Ice Armor now. All right, why do I do this? Ice Armor increases my mana regeneration by 30% multiplicative, okay? So now let's do the same again. I'm not going to cast Ice Blades. I'm just going to go for Frozen Orb, and I'm going to just keep Ice Armor up. So let's wait until we get some conjurations here. It's a little bit slow right now. Okay, so they're coming. And now let's start. So now you can see my Ice Armor cooldown. It's going down very fast. Let me actually close the skill tree so you can see my mana. And again, it's not perfect at this point because I'm not casting Ice Blades, right? But as you can see, my Ice Armor will be pretty much up all the time. So now let's incorporate the Ice Blades here, right? So we now just do Ice Blades and Ice Armor. And as you can see, I am good on mana, right? I'm fixed. So I changed the Ice Armor attribute. Now it's staggered, but it doesn't matter. So I changed the Ice Armor attribute. And this is an easy fix, okay? So you're always going to have Ice Armor up, and you're always going to have mana up. So if you're struggling, just throw away those 15% extra damage through crowd-controlled bosses, change your Ice Armor, spam your Ice Blades, and you're going to be good, okay? This is a tweak. I'm going to give you another tweak. Alright, if you're in the dungeon, Fury Surge. So whatever you're doing, let's just say, hey, let's take these 3 points of Icy Touch, screw 12% damage. Let's go for Fury Surge. 45% mana regeneration. Does a lot, okay? It does a lot. If you don't have your mana, just take out some random damage and go for Fury Surge. This helps you greatly in the dungeon. Right now, I'm playing Verse Mastery because I want to try if it's bugged, okay? In the guide, I'm playing Avalanche. And I highly recommend you to play Avalanche. I haven't tested if this is bugged yet, but maybe it is. And if it is, it gives you a little bit more top-end damage. But Avalanche gives you mana regeneration. So as you can see, I spec out of this now, right? So let's start firing. I'm just firing Frozen Orbs now. And I'm not even doing the Ice Blades. Just look at the bottom bar here, right? Where it order says gained Avalanche, gained Avalanche, gained Avalanche. So it actually happens a lot. It doesn't happen so much in a boss fight. But in the dungeon, it happens all the time. Basically, right now, it's like long time stuff. But, as you can see, I'm just holding Q. I'm not even doing Ice Blades. And I'm pretty much good on mana because I just get Avalanche once in a time. So as soon as the boss is staggered, as you can see, I have no issues anymore whatsoever. Even if I do Unstable Currents, it doesn't matter. So this is another easy fix. And I encourage you to play this if you're not playing it already. All right. More fixes. So this is all fixes you can get from the skill tree, really. But there's more. Okay. So I was talking about this number here, which is 20, right? If this number for you is not 20, you're gonna be completely out. Okay. So let me just remove this armor here right now, right? I'm just gonna remove it. And now you see the number is 13 now, right? So let's do this again. Even with Avalanche. Oh, look what happens. You see? I can't sustain. Because my base mana regeneration now is dog shit, okay? I put back this mana. Just this like tiny little 5 mana per second stat here, right? I put it back. Look at this. I'm good. Okay. So you understand? And again, the number's 4 conjurations. As soon as I start spamming Ice Blades, no mana issues, okay? So if you're still in early game and you're not like at the very high stage of the game, right? Because tempering all these items, okay, you have resource cost reduction here on your rings, right? Tempering those, actually I have like terrible min rolls, so I could even optimize, but I don't care at this point. Like masterworking these items, getting these resource cost reduction and resource generation stats higher. Same with Shaco, right? Getting the masterworking on your Shaco, getting the resource generation higher. It's very important, okay? But here's one more thing. If you're still in early game, you don't have the Shaco, right? So let me just put this off here and let's just search for like mana per second. So here's a helmet with mana per second. Where is it? So this one is 7, but you know, let's just say I'm putting this instead of my Shaco, right? I'm just using this 7 mana per second helmet. And look at my stats. Now I'm at 25, okay? So look what happens. See? No mana problems. Right? Start casting Ice Blades. 100% all the freaking time. Okay? So your base mana regeneration is very important. And if you're struggling, okay, get this mana per second on your helmet. Get it on your chest piece. If you don't have Asus boots, get it on your boots, okay? So if I just go for another mana per second boots, I think I have this one here is just +4. I just want to make a point here, right? So let me put this on. So now I have 29 mana per second. I'm not even doing Ice Blades. So as you can see, as soon as I hit, right, this is like 7 conjurations now, I guess. So I'm good. Right? Now it's like a little bit low because I'm a little bit unlucky, but you know, as soon as you start casting Ice Blades on top of it, at some point, you know, now I have the 10 conjuration stacks up and I'm gonna be fine mana-wise. No problem whatsoever. Okay, so mana regeneration per second is a very, very important stat. Don't skip this stat. Alright? So that is all I have to say about this, really. And then if you're still struggling, okay, if you're still struggling, even though you have mana per second on your gear, even though you have the avalanche going, right, even you did Fury Surge, even you did everything in the book, even you did the Shimmering Ice Armor, right? If you already pulled all these registers and you're still not containing mana, okay, then you start using aspects. All right, you don't use T-Ball's Will. Don't fall for the T-Ball's Will trap. That thing is not gonna fix stuff. So you go for aspects and you go for the what is it called? So you go for resource, right? And then you start going for Umbral. Aspect of the Umbral is extremely strong. It gives you 6 mana whenever you crowd control a mob, right? So you have all these crowd control modifiers on your gear. Chance to immobilize, what is it? Chance to freeze, chance to stun, chance to slow. Like all these are going to count for the aspect of the Umbral. So if you're really still struggling, go for that aspect. And that is really everything you can do. If you then still struggle, you know what? Just uninstall the game. that is just what it comes down to in the very end, okay? You don't want to use Prodigy's aspect. That's really just a temporary fix. So you don't want to go for these long cooldown style regeneration. So you go for aspect of the Umbral. Again, sacrifice your damage, get more resource regeneration up, masterwork your gear, and you're gonna be fine in the end. Okay, so why am I playing two-hand versus wand and focus? I know I lose, so I have wand and focus equipped right now. So what do I lose, right? I lose basically cooldown reduction and critical strike chance from my focus, right? So it is quite a big deal to lose these. And what I gain is basically more additive damage. So, I think the additive damage will kind of balance out with the crit, but you definitely gain cooldown reduction in for free, or you exchange cooldown reduction for some additive damage, right? And you also gain 10% lucky hit chance free from your wand. So the lucky hit chance seems fairly irrelevant, but the cooldown reduction is actually a little bit of a big deal. You get like more conjurations up, but still, I decide to choose my two-handed weapon because look at my aspect of Frozen Orbit. So this gives the 2 extra explosions from the Frozen Orb only 60% damage, okay? In exchange, I can put an aspect on here, for example, conceded aspect for 25% extra damage. So I'm playing the Frozen Orb aspect at 120%. So that means the 2 extra explosions of Frozen Orb deal 120% damage, right? So I'm actually getting double the damage of the 2 extra explosions. And this damage comes before all multipliers. So this is skill damage. So let's say I have a total of 1,000% multiplier to this, right? Everything combined. I think that's fair to say. Then I get this 60% before all those multipliers, right? Or if you put it different, this 25% here gets multiplied with 60%. So 60%, and then you increase that by 25%, you're going to end up at what, like 85% or something like that, or 80%. I don't even know. So you're far below the 100% you would usually have. So the result of this is if you play it like this, the frozen orbs are hitting substantially harder. And I'm going to show you in a replay. So I just recorded basically hitting this training dummy. And I'm going to show you in a replay now what I mean by that. Okay, here's the replay now of myself doing this on the training dummy. The dummy is staggered right now, as you can see, and I have a two-handed stuff on right now, right? So let's look at the higher numbers here. 3.1 million, 2.8, 3.2, 2.7. Just wait for some more here. A little bit hard to see if you go 3.2, 2.9, 2.8 or something like that behind that, right? So the numbers go into like the 3 millions. This is 2.4, 2.4, 2.3, 3.1. So they even go up to like 4 million, 2.5, 2.4, 3 million, 3 million, and 2.6, 3.1, 2.7, and I only have like 8 conjurations, so it's a little bit lower in this training army scenario than, in real dungeon. I'm not using elixir and stuff like that, right? But, this is overpower. So 2.9, 3. So I guess it's fair, like our high hits here in the 3 to like 3.2 million range, right? So let's compare this now with Wand and Focus. So here's Wand and Focus now. So before I go through this, just something to remind you. The high hits you're going to see of Wand and Focus are the first explosions of the orb. Because remember, with Wand and Focus, we only have 60% damage on the extra 2 explosions. So actually just 1/3 of the explosions are doing the big hits here, right? In my other video, the hits were essentially the same, right? The regular hit is 100% and the other 2 are 120%. So basically all 3 hits trigger the high numbers, and with Wand and Focus, only 1 out of 3 hits actually triggers the high numbers. So let's look at the highest numbers here. 2.1, 2.3, 1.4, 2.0, It's just 1 millions, 1 millions. Like you get a bunch of 1 millions. So there's a 2.3, there's a 3 million. That's like a very top end hit. 1.5, 1.4, 1.1, 2.3, 1.2, 1.8, 2.8. There's like 2.8s. That was a high one again. But as you see, I have 11 conjurations up right now. So I'm doing a little bit higher damage here. So 2.5 here, 2.1. 2.2, 2.4. So even with higher conjurations, my hits are significantly lower. And again, remember, this is only 1/3 of the hit being able to trigger the higher numbers, right? 2.5, 1.9, 1.8. So 2.1. So the damage of the hits is really like a good 33% lower at least. Okay, yes, you get a higher attack speed. But again, so I'm not saying that Wand and Focus is completely bad. I'm just saying, especially with the Masterworking, we're going to talk right after this about. And I think, at least without having absolutely perfect gear, the two-handed weapon is far superior at this point. In the very late game with completely maxed gear, this might actually change. And it is possible, but I cannot predict this at this point, right? So here's one more reason why I prefer the two-hand, at least at this point, and probably always, is Masterworking and Tempering. Because Masterworking and Tempering is crazy expensive and it's crazy RNG heavy. So if you look at my weapon, for example, just Masterworking one weapon to 12 out of 12 takes you like 3 hours of pit farming to get all the materials, right? And this is not even good. So as you can see, I settled for like 1 extra Frozen Orb projectiles. I should probably rework this, right, and go for 2. But just what I'm showing you right now is, so I have way less RNG masterworking 1 weapon instead of 2. Because if you look at the masterworking cost here, is, wait, this is a one-hand weapon, right? Look at the cost. 10, 10, 3, 100k. This is a two-handed. 10, 10, 3, 100k. So the cost is exactly the same. So since we're not in the very end game, you're saving yourself half of the masterworking cost, which at this stage of the game is actually huge. So just keep that in mind. Okay, one more question I get asked a lot is, why do you not play Tal'Rasha's ring and why do you not play Ring of Starless Skies? So let's start with the Tal'Rasha ring. This is the legacy one, but it doesn't matter. It's essentially the same, other than it's not having like good masterworking, right? So here's the thing with the Tal'Rasha ring in the current state of the game. So first of all, this build is mana hungry. If you're still playing my basic build variant, where you have Asus Ferocity and Aspect of Ancient Flame, it's okay for you to play Tal'Rasha's ring. If you have it or you don't have nothing better, it's good. So why do I not play this ring? So let's take a look at what does this actually give us. Okay, it gives me non-physical damage, which is essentially just a 40% additive damage. And this is 12 out of 12, right? So this is pretty much the same than a 12 out of 12. Then it gives me cooldown reduction, which is nice. That is the only good thing it's really giving me. It gives me resource generation, which I get from the tempering, same role, right? So resource generation is out. And it gives me lucky hit chance. Lucky hit chance is nice, but honestly, it doesn't really matter so much for Frozen Orb anymore, because you're not going to have a crazy amount of conjurations, and the lucky hit chance is really, really low. As you can see, the lucky hit chance of Frozen Orb has been nerfed to the ground. It's just 5%, right? So it literally, lucky hit is not driving your build, okay? It's nerfed to the ground. So let's just ignore the lucky hit. I don't play lucky hit on any of my gear pieces because it's really not so relevant. So what do we get from Tal'Rasha Ring? If we have 3 stacks of elements, we get 45% multiplicative damage here. If you want to play Andariels, right? I'm pretty sure I have one somewhere here. Andariels, if you play Andariels, you get a Poison Over. That's your 4th stack, right? So you can definitely play this helmet. Nothing wrong with Andariels, okay? If you play it, you get 60% from your Tal'Rasha ring, okay? So let's just make it 45% in a basic scenario. and 60% if you really want to play Andariels. But you know, you're gonna lose out if you have Shaco, you're gonna lose out on 4 all skills ranks. So I don't really consider this an option, okay? So I'm gonna stick with the 45% because on your weapon you have to have chance to cast Frozen Orb twice. So you cannot temper the shadow or poison damage on your weapon. So it is going to be 45% multiplicative damage. So what are we getting? We get 10% cooldown reduction and 45% multiplicative damage. Might be a little bit more cooldown reduction, you know, if you hit the Masterworking, blah, blah, blah. I'm not even going to talk about this. So 45%. What do we get for a ring here? So this ring is 9 out of 12. If I finish it, it's going to have 150 intelligence, which is 15% damage, okay? Then it's going to have, mine has 74% cold damage. That's going to jump up to 100%. So it's going to give me 100% cold damage. Resource generation, again, it's the same. And I have a dead stat here, which is 33% damage. But usually this would have another 12% crit. Okay, 12% crit is... I will roughly say 12% crit is 12% damage. I'm not going to explain the full story why I say that. So just take my word on this, that 12% crit is roughly 12% damage. So we have 15% from the intelligence. We have 12% from the crit, is 27%. Then we add 100% additive damage. 100% additive damage, if you count all your additive damage, right? Let's count our additive damage here. Critical strike damage, I only take half of it because we only have 50% crit. So I take 140% plus 450, that's 600, right? Plus 300, that's 700. Plus damage with cold, that's 900. So make it the 1,000 with the other 30%. So we have 1,000, then we have damage versus close, 1,100, 1,200, 1,300. So we have 1,300 damage, okay? So take out the 100%. Let's just make the 74% 100%, right? This is not a very good roll. So let's add 100% and let's just make it 7% extra damage, okay? So let's just keep it low. So we have 15% from the intelligence, 10% from the crit, that's 25, 7% from the additive, that's 32, and 30% from the aspect, that's 62%. 62% versus the 45% from the max rolled Tal'Rasha ring. Alright, we have 15% more damage, and I didn't count the attack speed. Alright, and I didn't account for greater affixes, right? You can have greater affixes intelligence, you have greater affixes crit, you can have greater affixes attack speed here. The greater affixes on Tal'Rasha ring are irrelevant. The only thing you really can get is cooldown reduction, but the other ones are not really so strong. Okay, so greater affixes boost this even higher. So I'm just saying it's like roughly 75% damage without the attack speed, and then we get attack speed on top of it, which is the most important stat for this build. So really, this regular ring is so far superior above your Tal'Rasha ring here. Now let's talk about Starless Skies. What do we get from Starless Skies? So we get, again, we get 30% core skill damage, 26% critical strike damage. We halve the critical strike damage. So again, we had like roughly 40% damage, right? So then we get the lucky hit chance, which doesn't do anything for us. We already talked about it. At least with this one, we get crit chance, which is actually nice. So this Starless Skies is way, 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 way better than Tal'Rasha ring. It's like 15 million times better. And if you have it and you have resource problems, for example, just use it, okay? If you don't have resource problems, this is going to give you the 40% plus the crit. So it is a little bit less than the Tal'Rasha ring. And again, I already did the calculation, so it falls far behind the other rings. But this still gives you resource. So you can definitely use it, but on the high end, it doesn't give you attack speed. Attack speed is extremely important for our build. We need attack speed to get our conjurations done. If you don't have enough conjurations, our mana regeneration is gonna suck. So, I mean, you can still use Starless Skies, but I'm just talking high end now. It's gonna fall far behind a legendary ring. So this is why I don't use these two items, okay? Another question I get asked all the time is, how do you have teleport and flame shield on your bar, and if you don't put any points on these in the skill tree? So if I have the skill tree here, right, I do not use these points. And I tend to always save these. So how do I use the skills without having points in them? There's two answers for the question. The first thing is, if you look at the guide, my armor has +3 to defensive skills. So this is super easy stat to get, right? Just get yourself an armor. It doesn't matter if it is +2 or +1 or +3. Really, you just want to have the defensive skills. The skill rank of them doesn't really matter so much. So just get the defensive skills. You can also enchant it on there. It's pretty easy. Chest piece doesn't have so many attributes. Second version is if you have the Shaco, this gives +4 to all skills as well. So you want to have one of these or both, right? Defensive skills on your armor is really easy to get. It saves you 2 easy skill points, okay? Second question is, how do you have points into Lightning Spear if you don't use Lightning Spear? And the same question is, how do you do Vulnerable if you don't use Greater Frozen Orb? So here's the thing. If you shoot Frozen Orbs, our Fractured Winter Glass here says, casting a Frozen Orb has a 35 to 50% chance to spawn a random conjuration. So as you can see here you already see the Lightning Spear. So I cast some Frozen Orbs, right? And just wait for some Lightning Spears to go on here. See, like this Lightning Spear guy running around here. So the Frozen Orb spawns the Lightning Spears automatically, so you don't need to have that on your bar. And Lightning Spear makes stuff vulnerable whenever it crits. And Lightning Spear basically always crits, because after Lightning Spear crits, it gets 5% extra crit. So basically, you can just make it like Lightning Spear is gonna make everything vulnerable, which it hits, and literally it hits everything, okay? Okay, another question people ask me all the time, how do you have so much gold? Well, I play on the Eternal Realm and not on the Seasonal Realm. The realms are completely the same gameplay-wise. The only difference on the Seasonal Realm is there's an elixir of Holy Bolts, which I don't care about personally. But that is how I have so many gold, right? That is how I have so much gold.